The phrase "my kingdom is not of this world," first expressed by Jesus in the Gospel of John, is one of the most significant for understanding his divine mission and the nature of his spiritual government. When he responds to Pilate, saying that his kingdom does not belong to this world, he is not denying his sovereignty, but rather pointing to the essential difference between the earthly kingdoms, limited by physical borders and human laws, and the spiritual kingdom, that transcends all material limitations. Jesus' kingship, therefore, is not based on power or military strength, as would be expected of an earthly ruler, but on the authority of the spiritual truth that he reveals. Unlike worldly rulers, who seek to dominate through force, manipulation, or oppression, Jesus rules with the strength of love and truth, which are eternal and immutable. He did not come to establish a physical empire or conquer territories. His mission was spiritual and aimed to free humanity from the slavery of ego, sin, and illusion, leading human beings to a state of total freedom, peace, and inner harmony. The truth of Jesus is not a relative truth, subject to changes in time or circumstances, but an absolute and eternal truth, which is beyond the limitations of the material world. His kingdom is not governed by a political or economic structure, but by the power of divine truth, which transforms people's hearts and minds, guiding them to lives of justice, compassion, and wisdom. He is king, but his rule is not over physical territories or subject people, but over the hearts and souls of those who yield to his word and follow his truth. When Jesus talks about the world, he refers to the state of life based on the passions, desires, and selfishness that characterize human existence outside of spiritual harmony. The material world, governed by the laws of time and space, is a place of constant struggle for power, personal satisfaction, and possessions. The world is dominated by immediate desires and passions that often lead us to an endless cycle of dissatisfaction, as everything material is ephemeral and subject to decay. Man, when trapped in this world, is trapped by the limitations of the body and the illusion of the ego, always looking for something outside himself to achieve happiness, but never finding true peace. However, the kingdom of God, as Jesus describes it, is a spiritual realm, intangible to the physical eye but infinitely more real and lasting than any material reality. In this realm, the laws that govern are the spiritual laws of love, justice, wisdom, and truth, which are not limited by time or death. Jesus makes it clear that his kingdom cannot be found anywhere in this world, as it is a kingdom that resides in the hearts of those who seek the truth and are willing to free themselves from the illusions of ego and matter. The kingdom of God, unlike the material world, is a state of being where the human soul, freed from worldly passions and desires, can live in peace, harmony, and freedom, in union with the divine will. True happiness, therefore, does not lie in external things or in the achievement of material goods, but in living in accordance with the eternal truth of the Spirit. Jesus teaches us that the world is subject to destruction and that material things are fleeting, but the kingdom of God is eternal and indelible, as it is a spiritual kingdom that does not depend on external circumstances to be experienced. When Jesus states that I am king, he is not referring to an earthly royalty limited by space and time, but to a spiritual sovereignty that is eternal and unchanging. His kingship is not through the possession of land or wealth, but through dominion over the human spirit, through the authority of his divine truth, which transforms and frees souls. Jesus, as king, does not impose an empire through force or military control, but offers freedom to those who recognize his spiritual sovereignty and submit to his internal rule of love and truth. He is the king of a kingdom not of this world, a kingdom where material laws do not apply and where true freedom is found in the knowledge of the truth. Their royalty is immune to death, time, and the changes that affect earthly kingdoms. He does not rule by physical reign, but by the strength of his spiritual presence that transcends death and separation. The sovereignty of Jesus, then, is a sovereignty of the Spirit, as he rules from the inside out, transforming people's hearts and revealing eternal truth to them. By declaring that I am king, he reveals his supreme authority, which does not depend on any external achievement, but on the supremacy of his inner truth. Jesus' sovereignty is absolute, not through a physical throne, but through his dominion over the spiritual reality that governs the hearts and minds of those who surrender to his will. Jesus teaches us that the kingdom of God is a state of spiritual liberation, where individuals are free from the bonds of ego and material illusions that bind human beings to a life of suffering and dissatisfaction. The kingdom of God is not a physical place, but a state of consciousness, where the human soul frees itself from earthly passions and desires and aligns itself with divine truth. This kingdom is governed by immutable spiritual principles, such as love, peace, justice, and truth, which are the eternal laws that govern the universe. In the kingdom of God, true happiness does not depend on the possession of material goods or earthly achievements, but on dominion over the spirit and the ability to live in accordance with God's truth. True freedom is spiritual freedom, which comes when man frees himself from the limitations imposed by the ego and external circumstances, and begins to live in harmony with the divine will. Jesus shows that, in the kingdom of God, true happiness lies in the freedom of the spirit, in inner peace, and in the joy of living in tune with the truth. This state of spiritual liberation is not achieved through material achievements, but through inner transformation, the practice of virtue and surrender to God's will. The happiness of the kingdom of God is a lasting state of happiness and peace, which does not depend on external conditions, but on the realization of the true spiritual purpose of the human being, which is to live in union with God and His truth. In the kingdom of God, true happiness does not come from material things or external achievements, but from deep spiritual fulfillment and a life in harmony with divine truth. Material wealth and possessions are transitory and cannot provide lasting happiness, as they are subject to time, destruction, and change. However, in God's spiritual realm, happiness is eternal, for it is based on the spirit's mastery over the limitations of the body and ego, and on the connection with eternal truth that never changes. True happiness is found in the freedom to live without the desire for possession, without worrying about the future or seeking external validation. When the spirit frees itself from the bonds of materiality and achieves inner peace, it experiences a deep and lasting joy that does not depend on anything external, but comes from within. This spiritual happiness is not affected by external circumstances or life's challenges, because it is based on a deeper and more lasting reality, the union of the human spirit with God. Jesus teaches that true happiness is found in the pursuit of truth and spiritual freedom, not in the pursuit of material goods or pleasures. In the kingdom of God, happiness is an internal achievement, a transformation that occurs within each human being who surrenders to divine truth and lives according to the principles of love and wisdom. The bliss of the kingdom of God, as described by Jesus, is a state of mind that transcends external circumstances and the limitations of the material world. It is not associated with the possession of goods or the achievement of status, but rather with the individual's spiritual fulfillment. True happiness, in the context of the kingdom of God, is found in self-control and internal harmony, which can only be achieved through the constant practice of spiritual virtues, such as love, compassion, humility, and wisdom. Unlike the material world, where happiness is often ephemeral and dependent on external factors, the state of happiness in the kingdom of God is lasting and unchanging. This state of mind is marked by the absence of selfish desires and the constant search for truth and union with God. The true king, in the spiritual realm, is the one who has freed himself from all material ties and lives in peace with himself and others. Happiness in this realm is not in achieving something outside oneself, but in discovering fulfillment and inner peace, achieved through connection with the divine. Jesus teaches us that the kingdom of God is not a physical place, but a spiritual state that can only be accessed by those who free themselves from the bonds of ego and materiality. The ego, with its desires, passions, and attachments to the material world, is the main obstacle for the human soul to reach the state of lasting and true happiness. In the kingdom of God, the soul is free to express itself according to its true nature, which is divine. Jesus does not call us to seek riches, status, or power in the world, but to seek truth, justice, and love in our hearts. He shows that the man who allows himself to be dominated by the ego is condemned to a life of incessant search for satisfaction, which will never be fully achieved. In contrast, those who seek the kingdom of God by living according to spiritual principles experience true freedom and happiness. Liberation from the bonds of the ego does not mean the loss of personal identity, but rather the transformation of the being, so that it aligns with the divine values of love, compassion, and truth. In the kingdom of God, true freedom is found in the ability to live without the limitations imposed by the ego, without the incessant search for material possessions or external recognition. True liberation is spiritual freedom, which allows human beings to live in harmony with the divine will, without being carried away by the illusions of the material world. In the kingdom of God, peace is not just the absence of external conflict, but a deep inner peace that comes from connecting with the divine. This peace is something that transcends external circumstances and the difficulties of everyday life. It is a state of serenity and harmony that is born when human beings reconcile themselves with their true nature, leaving aside the illusions of the ego and aligning themselves with the eternal principles of truth, justice, and love. Jesus teaches us that true peace comes from living in tune with the Spirit, and not from conquering what the world offers. When the soul aligns with divine values, peace becomes a constant state of being, regardless of what happens in the external world. In the kingdom of God, peace does not depend on material possessions or worldly success, but is the fruit of union with God and the realization that true happiness is within us, not outside. This inner peace is what allows us to live without fear, without anxiety, and with full trust in the divine plan. The spirit that achieves this inner peace becomes immune to the ups and downs of material life and is in constant harmony with the divine purpose for its existence. True spiritual transformation is the key to experiencing the kingdom of God in our lives. Jesus teaches us that conversion of heart and mind is necessary so that we can access the eternal bliss that he describes. It's not enough to just superficially change our actions or appearance. A profound internal change is needed, a transformation of being that allows us to live in accordance with the spiritual principles that govern the kingdom of God. This transformation is the process of leaving behind the selfish desires and illusions of the material world and embracing divine truth, love, and wisdom. When we surrender to God's will and seek to live in accordance with His truth, our lives are transformed. Spiritual transformation is a continuous process in which human beings become increasingly aligned with the divine purpose for their lives. In the kingdom of God, true happiness and true peace are the fruits of this transformation, for as we become more like God in our character and actions, we experience true bliss that cannot be found anywhere else. One of the most powerful characteristics of the kingdom of God is its eternity. Unlike earthly kingdoms, which are temporary and subject to decline, the kingdom of God is eternal and unchanging. This realm does not depend on time, history, or circumstances, for it transcends all limitations of the material world. When Jesus speaks of the kingdom of God, he refers to a spiritual realm that is permanent, immortal, and absolute. True bliss and happiness, therefore, are not found in things that pass away, but in spiritual fulfillment that is eternal. The kingdom of God is beyond death, beyond physical limitations, and is available to all who seek to live in harmony with divine principles. It is a realm where the human soul, free from the limitations of the body and ego, can experience true freedom and peace, and where death has no power, for spiritual life is eternal. The eternity of God's kingdom invites us to look beyond the temporary concerns of this world and seek true happiness and peace in our relationship with God. The bliss of the kingdom of God is not a state that can only be achieved in the future, but something that we can begin to experience already in this life, by aligning ourselves with the truth and divine will. If you are interested in this content about the kingdom of God and want to continue learning more about spirituality, be sure to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on the video. Your participation is very important to us. Also comment on your impressions and share with your friends. Let's go together on this journey of discovery and spiritual evolution.